You spent the last couple of years and a lot of money working on your own independent project. Is it a comic book? Is it a role-playing game? Is it a cartoon? And now you're ready to launch that to the world. You are ready to go for crowdfunding money to make your dream a reality. But how do you do that? You know that one of the best ways is to get in front of your potential audience. Get on different YouTube shows and make your case. Get your face out in front of people. Today, let's take a look at how you do that. How do you be a good and successful guest on different shows? The first question you have to ask yourself is, are you actually ready to go on shows? A lot of people want to get their project out there and get their name out there as soon as possible. And there's nothing wrong with that. But once you get on a show, you are committed in a very public space. If you go out there advertising your project and it takes 2 more years to actually launch a campaign, that's not going to be good for you. And if you launch a campaign, you need a certain amount of material to be able to show and to sell your idea. Are you a writer who only has a working outline for a script? Are you an artist who maybe only has a few doodles? Maybe this is your opportunity to sit back and say, I might want to have a little bit more done before I start putting myself out there. Otherwise, you risk people losing interest in the long term or maybe even ridicule for trying to be a grifter. If you're not quite ready, one of the best things you could do is just to hang out in the community. Hang out in the chat on other people's shows. Talk to people. Ask people questions. Usually, they won't be very upset if you send them the occasional message or want to talk about certain projects in a chat. Everybody loves more content on their shows. What you need to do now is prepare material packets for your shows. Number 1, do the hosts actually know you? Now, I know there are lists floating around that have dozens or even hundreds of different shows for people to potentially go on. It's a good idea to take a look at those lists and see who's out there and see how much time you're going to need to promote your book. However, most of these hosts aren't going to know you. And if you're hosting a show, it frankly is difficult when you have someone who doesn't have a track record of work. You don't know them personally, you haven't talked to them, maybe they just contacted you out of the blue. It makes it hard to fill an hour of time with this person on. What you need to do is, 1, come up with a portfolio. If you're an artist, you should have some works. It doesn't necessarily matter that the work is directly related to this project. You will be able to show a host your style, what kind of work that you're capable of. And this portfolio, it doesn't necessarily have to go out to the public. This is something that you could say, hey host, I'm just giving you this to show you what I can do, but please don't display any of these during your show or during any previews. If you're a writer, do you have samples of things that you've written before? Pointing out genres and writing styles that a host can take a look at will definitely help them to have questions for you. Once you're talking about your project in particular, show any sort of visual aids that you have for it. So this could be production art, something that's going to go in your campaign, something that's going to be in the final work, or it could just be concept art. Maybe you have characters, and this is what this character looks like. Just a character sheet. That's fine to show. YouTube is a visual medium. Now, there are a lot of shows, including this one, that often don't have a lot visually going on and rely more on audio. That's fine. But when you are on a show, you want more audience interaction with you. If you want people in the chat asking questions and you want the host to have more questions, visual aids are handy. Are you a writer and you don't have any visual aids? Well, get some. At some point, you're going to have to commission some sort of work. Your book's going to need a cover, right? maybe it's time to get that done. People do judge books by their cover. Fantastic artwork for the thumbnail or for the host to put up during the show, that's going to attract people and make them listen to what you have to say. The next step is identifying your audience. Who exactly are you going to sell this book or whatever to? Yes, I know everyone. Everyone is your audience, right? Yeah, no, that's not the case. You need to think about things by genre, by age, maybe even by sex. So if you're writing a mature horror that has a lot of body horror and graphic blood, or maybe there's graphic sexual content as well, you're not going to do very well on a talk show that is geared towards children's books. So you need to understand your own audience. Now, yes, of course, it would be great if someone who primarily buys children's books also likes horrible books with graphic sex, but that's generally not going to be the case. So go through your work, and to be honest, if you don't know, maybe have some friends or somebody else in the industry take a look and give you a little advice. Genres are the main point. People who like horror, well, they can often like sci-fi and fantasy. They are less likely to like romance or teenage coming-of-age stories. So once you identify your particular genre, or maybe your book falls into two, you can identify adjacent genres that would also work. Then the age group. Is your book YA? Like actual YA? You know, an actual teenager as opposed to the 40-year-old women who seem to love YA? If it is, that's great. You might be able to push that a little higher and get early to mid-20s. If you're going old school, you can have books that are aimed, let's say, at people in their 20s, and oftentimes teenagers will still enjoy those books too. But you need to figure out who is your primary target audience. And the last thing you need to do to prepare to be on the show is create an argument for your project. What about your work makes you special? What about your work will make someone want to give you money? People have money and they like to spend it on entertainment, and they like to spend it on things that appeal to them. I have $25 right now. What are you going to give me in exchange for my $25? What exactly you want to advertise as the highlights of your project really depend on what you can deliver and your audience. So, for example, if you are advertising for, let's say, a graphic novel, art, do you have a good artist who will be on the project? If you do, that's a real highlight. Show some examples, let us in who is this person, and show off their previous work. Do you have a great team? Are you part of an all-star team? Great, highlight your team members. Maybe you can get one or some of them to go on a show with you. And if your argument is story, great. How is your story better or different? We've all heard a million vampire stories. What is your argument? Are you tired of sparkly vampires and you want a traditional, sexy, vicious vampire? Great! A lot of people would be into that. Are you saying that perhaps there's a virus that went out of control and started turning people into vampires? Well, okay, a lot of people might be into the sci-fi dystopia setting that has. And once you've finished deciding how exactly you want to sell your project, what are its strong points, then it's time for you to pick a show. When you're deciding what shows to go on, don't just rely on a simple list. Look at previous aired episodes. You don't even have to watch the whole thing. Just go look at what the topics are. Do those topics seem to be in a line with what your project is? Check out who have their previous guests been. Are those guests also working in similar spaces? There is a limited amount of time for you once you create a sign-up list for your campaign, and then after the campaign is launched until the campaign ends. As much as possible, you want to be on as many shows that A, align with your product, and B, have larger audiences. If you're going on a show, let's say Comics Artist Secret Pro, and you're releasing a book of your watercolors of horticulture, that's probably not a great audience. Maybe you would get one or two, but if you went on a smaller show that focused on watercolors of plants, you would probably get more sales because those people are much more likely to buy your product. A lot of people are likely to say, well, I only want to get on the biggest channels. Cool. Why would those channels want you? If you are a first timer and you're just coming up, channels get a million offers all the time. Your best bet is to start with the smaller channels. Find ones that align to your purposes, maybe ones who are trying to grow, trying to increase their viewership. Go on there, knock it out of the ballpark. Then people in bigger shows will start to hear about you. Maybe they'll come check you out. And once they see, hey, you're a good guest, they'll want you on their show too. Next, you want to determine, is the show that you've agreed to go on, is it a show where you're on as an individual, or will there be other people there as well? Both present different opportunities and different challenges. A show that has more people on it will probably have a little bit larger of an audience in terms of the other guests will also bring in some of their fans, and you may have a chance to reach a new audience that you didn't before. The problem with a show like that is that you are gonna have to butt in, you are gonna have to be a shark to get your message and to get your topic in. But if you do too much, people will see you as arrogant, people will see you as kind of a jerk. So it's a real balance to make sure you get your message across, but don't come on too strong. If you go on a show where it's usually one-on-one, this is a time for you to shine. This is a time for you. You can make a long-form case for yourself, why people should like you and why people should like your product. The problem here is you need to hold up half of the roof. The host can only do so much to make a show interesting, and he can only bring in so much of an audience. It's up to you to have good stories, have good content, be able to make a long-form case. Tell more about the product. Tell more about why people like you. Now that you've identified what kind of a show you're going to go on, it is up to you to create a 60-second and also a 5 to 10 minute pitch for your product. If you're on those shows with a lot of people, or maybe just the host is all over the place, you need to have a very succinct message. This is my project. It's awesome because A, B, C, D. I've got these people working on it. That's going to help sell your product. If you're on an individual show, or maybe you're on a group show and the other people aren't very talkative, you need a longer form message, 5 to 10 minutes. Tell us more about who you are, what your influences were, why did you decide to create this work, and then tell us about the work itself. A lot of people like to keep things close to the vest. Oh, I don't want to say too much. If you don't say anything, I, as a customer, am not going to be very interested. You need to pique my curiosity. What are the overall themes of the work? What is the overall plot device? What style of art are you employing with it? These are all things we want to know. A lot of people are going to ask, like, well, what the heck should that sound like? Let me read you from the editorial page of Crystal McGee's The Good Knight. Fantasy and horror are my favorite genres to write because they grant the opportunity to explore some difficult theme through the characters as well as the worlds they inhabit. The Good Knight also contains a number of aspects common to sword and sorcery fantasy subgenre, which is also fascinating to me. Films like Excalibur, Conan, Legend, Fire and Ice, and the Lord of the Rings films were a big influence. Sometime back, I came up with the concept for what would become The Good Knight while watching the film Akira. Tetsuo, one of the main characters, is in the hospital following some unfortunate events when suddenly a trio of psychic children take on the form of various toys, a teddy bear, a toy car, and a plush bunny to mess with him. That scene was so intense, captivating, it got to me. What if an adult was trapped in the form of a teddy bear, and what stories could I tell? This is an excellent description for her work. The actual editorial goes on longer, and I encourage you to read it and adapt it to your own needs. Now you're all set. You are ready to go on your shows. You've prepped your materials. You've prepped your arguments. So what does it take to be good on that show? First of all, keep in mind, when you are a guest, the host is doing you a solid. Make sure you confirm with the person for a specific time. Make sure you reconfirm. If you can send materials ahead of time. Hey, I want to show X, Y, and Z. I have a packet, and here's some examples for you to look at. Here's those examples of my writing. The host will be ecstatic because, frankly, it's our butts on the line too. We need to make an entertaining show for our audiences. If you come on and all we can ask is, so do you like things and stuff? That's not entertaining for everyone. When you're on the show, don't badmouth others. It's okay to not like other people. It's okay to not like other works. Even if they are your political opposites, don't badmouth them. You can say, I don't really like this or I don't really like that. But once you start going into, these people are jerks, I hate these people, it doesn't make you look good. Another great thing to do is ask questions of the host. Let's say you're on Bancroft's show and you are a writer and you're talking about how you work with artists. At the end of your answer, ask Bancroft, hey, how do you work with other people? Remember, this show is the host show, and primarily this show is to promote them and their projects and build their audience. As much as this person is lending his or her audience to you to help you build yours, you should also work to help them. By including them in the conversation, this makes you look good by allowing the host to sound smart and have opinions on things instead of just yourself. This is something that will get you asked back later. Before the show starts, advertise your appearance on your social media networks. Could be Twitter, could be Minds, could be your own YouTube channel. Hey guys, tomorrow night I'll be on such and such a show. If you show the host that you are putting forth the effort to promote their show, you will be a frequent guest. And at the end of the day, it's always best if you publicly thank the host. Again, on social media or on another YouTube channel, perhaps your own, later on, say, hey, I just want to thank XYZ channel for having me on. Oh, it was a great conversation. Everybody go check it out. Ultimately, the success or failure of your campaign is going to fall on your shoulders. Do you have good quality? Do you have good people working with you? And how much effort did you put into getting the word out? Hopefully this video has helped you out a little bit to see what makes a good guest. If you're a good guest, you will definitely have a lot more opportunities to go on different shows and have more appearances on those shows. The more you get your face out there, the more you get your project out there, the better it's going to be in terms of overall success. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, reply down below. What do you think I missed? Was I wrong? Is any of this advice bad for being a guest? What else do you think guests should do on shows? Click the subscribe channel for more content, and I'll see you guys soon.